Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture's 4th Annual Holiday Artist Studio Tour. I'm Betsy Godlewski, the Director of Development here at the MAC. Like many events this year, our studio tour has also gone virtual. We miss seeing all of you in person, but we're delighted to bring you a few of the most talented and creative artists in our region. And you don't even have to get in your car to visit. Each of our artists approaches their work differently, and we are showcasing a mix of mediums. But you'll find that there's a common theme about why they create and how they like to stretch and grow. At the end of the tour, you'll find links to all of this year's artists, in case you'd like to purchase art or inquire about a commission. We also hope that you will buy local and support the wonderful artists in our region this holiday season. I want to thank Uptick Studios for supporting the tour again this year. And a big thank you to our colleague Ellen Postlethwaite for directing, producing, and being the camera crew for the tour. Remember, you can attend the tour and watch anytime and as many times as you'd like, starting at 9 o'clock on Friday, December the 4th, all the way through midnight on Sunday evening. Thank you for attending the 2020 Artist Studio Tour, and happy holidays from all of us here at the MAC.
Hi, my name is Sheila Evans, and welcome to my studio. This is my Hobbit House tiny enamel studio, just barely big enough to do what I need to do to make things like these. These are enamel on steel. This is actually a hammered copper top that I created and enameled that, and then I bent these steel pieces. Each of these panels takes about probably 6 or 7 firings. The firings are quick, but it's fired in a kiln at about 1400 degrees. And on this, there's the chime. I built all of the parts of this and put it together, which was a first, and that was a really fun project. I'd been thinking about doing it for a long time, but finally got around to it. And then this piece over here, this is a chafing stand that I found salvaged that I managed to patina, and that was the starting point of this piece, which is all about migratory birds and protections being removed from migratory birds and animals in the last few years. So a lot of my pieces have an environmental theme, and this is one of them. So I have been working in enamel for probably about the past 4 years. I've been a painter and a pastelist for decades, probably 30 years. Anyway, but I picked up this medium because I wanted to do something that was really permanent, something that could be outside, something that might translate eventually into public art. And I've been doing a lot of larger pieces, but lately I've gotten into doing some small work, partially because there's small work shows coming up, studio sales, holiday time, but anyway, but it's been really fun. For instance, I had to learn to hammer the copper top for the birdcage chime out there. And before I did that, I did a few practice bowls, like these little copper ones. And since I had them laying around, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to see what it's like to try to enamel them. And so I started doing these, and it was kind of addictive. So that's what I've been working on lately, is doing a lot of these little copper bowls, and then actually starting to work on some jewelry pieces, which they're not put together yet because I'm missing the parts. But anyway, I'm doing these little panels for cuff bracelets, and yeah, and also all of those involve shaping copper with a hammer, and then you know, I have to cut it out, file it, shape it, clean it, and then start adding layers of enamel, which I do by spraying it with airbrush for the most part, and doing sgraffito techniques, and each layer gets fired separately, so each piece will have anywhere from probably 5 to 8 or 10 firings. The firings are really quick, just a couple of minutes and it's done, and then it has to cool, but It's a pretty labor-intensive process, but I really enjoy it because there's just so many different things to do. Some of my bigger pieces involve a lot more planning and layout. These pieces are kind of one-off, freehand things that I do that just come out how they do. The larger pieces require a lot of planning. I usually make layers of friskets to block out when I spray on the pieces, so I'll have more control, precision, how everything's going to look. I do a lot of planning ahead of time, and so it's a really labor-intensive process. A larger piece can take me up to a month, probably, most of the time, just because there's so much to do. And I love doing this. It's just so exciting. I love making things, and I love learning new things too. So I think, that is a lot of the reason that I've done so many different mediums. But yeah, I love learning new skills and solving problems. I'm really inspired by Harold Belays. I heard once that he's the one that talked me into trying this in the first place, but he would accept a job and not have any idea how he was going to do it, and then he would figure it out as he went. And I try to keep that problem solving in mind, and try to take on things that I don't know how to do. And it's been really fun because they've been turning out okay. And I love the process. I love the learning. I love the making. It's just really exciting to me. And if I am not making things, I just get really cranky, and nobody wants to be around me when I'm not making things. So I would say that's why I love being an artist. Anyway, my medium is kiln-fired enamel, which has to be fired onto metal at around 1400 degrees or so. And I do it on a variety of surfaces. I use steel sometimes, but recently I've been working on these little copper items. So I've been doing bowls, which, well, it starts out like this. I'll get a sheet of copper and cut it out. And then using this log and this lovely hammer that I just got, I will shape it into a form like this. And then I'm ready to start enameling. So in this case, I've got one that I've already done, and it has a cover coat on it, which is white, which will provide a nice base for the colors that I'll put down later. And it's ready to go into the kiln, so I just need to put on some protective gear and I'll get it in there. Okay, it'll go in for about 2 minutes, but I have to watch the temperature. So when I open this up, I've got to wait for it to drop to about 1450 before I put this in. If it's too hot, it'll warp a bunch. Okay, so then that's in there. Mix it up and start the timer. Now I'll have to continue to watch this temperature because it'll start to go up pretty quickly, and I don't want it to get very high to prevent it from warping. So I'll just have to watch it and open the door periodically. I'm just starting to learn to do that, and I found out a trick where you can take 3 similar bowls and stack the hot one inside and reshape it. So I'm going to be trying that as soon as I have 3 similar bowls made. But yeah, for the moment I can just do it with a couple of trowels, kind of reshape it if it comes out warped. But I'm just going to try, hopefully, to keep it from getting too hot. So once it gets up to about 1420, I'm going to check and see if it's if the surface is gloss. That means that it's fully fired. So I can peek in really fast and make sure, see where it's at, and then if it needs a little more time, I'll let it go. Still not. No, still not gloss. Yep, there we go. There. So now that piece is ready to have color applied, which the colors I use, especially for something curved like this, they come as a fine powder, and I have to mix it with water and then strain it to make sure that there aren't any chunks, I guess, and then I'll go ahead and put it through an airbrush. I apply it with an airbrush, and usually I'll heat it. It has to be completely dry before I put it in the kiln, so I'll use a heat gun, heat it up, maybe give it another layer just to be sure that there's enough that it's even. Yeah, I found that working with liquid enamel is the best. You can see it looks pretty normal right now, but it would basically burn my hand off if I were to touch it. So if you like what you see here, and if you're interested in seeing more, you can find my art at sheilaevans.net online, and I will have a special page just for the MAC holiday tour with items for sale similar to what you see here. And there's a lot of other things on the website too, my paintings, my pastels. So if you don't mind, give that a look, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have happy holidays.
Hello, I'm Melissa Lang, and I'm an abstract painter. I work in oils, acrylics, and charcoals. And as you can see, my paintings are very expressive. My subject matter is the concept actually behind my paintings are sort of the intersection between human behavior and thought and emotion, and sort of between the intellect and feeling, and between the mind and the body. My work has a lot of movement and gesture in it, as I used to be a dancer. So when listening to music, it sort of channels through into my arm and creates this sort of lyrical line that is directs movements and conveys my experience, my feelings, and at the moment, and then I'll come back to my work, maybe take a break, maybe the next day, and start analyzing and thinking. So there's this dichotomy between sort of the human condition of our brains and our hearts that sort of have a dialogue. And whenever, I'm interested in how the mind and the senses constitute reality, but through nature. I love nature and have always, since I was a young girl, and I live my studio is on the Palouse, and it oversees the acres of beautiful woods and a theater of dynamic skies and clouds, and so I'm constantly inspired not only by just visually, but also experientially walking through nature, where I find small little items where maybe some bones from different deer or animals, rocks, twigs, any small item like that. In reference, I'll choose. At the same time, I'll be, in awe of just the phenomena of the experience and of weather. And then when I read about what's happening, grand scale with volcanic eruptions and man-made and natural disasters, and through all that, waves, gigantic tidal waves, that has a certain energy. And I think that my work kind of conveys that sort of energy as a metaphor, and then at the same time we are connected to that, and so it relates back to just my human experience. And so these are kind of the bigger ideas that inform my work, but when it really comes down to it, I generally start by drawing, and then I paint into them, but sometimes I also start with painting. And so my color choices are very intuitive, based on what I'm looking at or experiencing at the moment. It generally, what happens though, with all that thought and all that concept, I start painting, and the painting really tells me what to do. And I know that I'm connected with the process when the painting starts when I start reacting to an action, when a rapport or a dialogue develops. It's like
I'll make a mark. Let's see here. And I'll come down and let's add a mark over here. A lot of times I don't have references. Sometimes I'll bring a reference in the middle of the process because I get lost. And sometimes I start with a reference. So it's all depending on what the painting needs. So as I see this mark here, that starts telling me that maybe I want to add something over here. I'm going to add possibly, maybe darken that area. I'm like, well, that's not going to work, so I'm going to soften that. And so it's kind of like, try this. No. And then there's a lot of, second guessing, like, no, maybe not that. And then as soon as you start changing and interacting with it, new things develop, new discoveries. And maybe I'll bring this. So as soon as I can think myself out of the painting, but as soon as I start getting into the process, it starts telling me what to do, and then I know I'm hooked and I'm connected. So it's really a translation of my immediate experience, sort of an improvisation. So I graduated from the University of New Orleans in 1994. So in my graduate program, I explored drawing and sculpture as a minor in addition to painting. But it was really the drawing where I found myself and I found my voice. And I think it's because I'm working with charcoal and it's very malleable and mutable. I can change it. Oh, here I need some. It's very forgiving, and it also is very interactive. So I can come, if I feel like I need to add a line, or take out images, I can erase it emphatically. And then it's because it's just a direct connection between the charcoal and my arm. And I don't have the technical mediation that painting involves with mediums and brushes. And so that almost creates sort of and connects to my brain. So it sort of sometimes stops my emotional expression that I love what happens with drawing. So also anytime when you're painting with oil on canvas, there's a tradition of much sort of an elitist history that can create a lot of expectations that create sort of fear and hesitation. So when I'm working on paper, it's almost like I'm working on the wall, and it's almost like a child drawing on the wall. So I'm really intrigued. I love working on paper, and lately I've been working on mylar, which is another more ephemeral surface that has light and air and movement, and it's also very forgiving and accepts the mark, but you can easily take it away. So I'm really interested when I'm drawing in not only creating my direct expression, but also when I'm referencing an image, how the line changes. And I think throughout my work, this is evident where I'm exploring the different characteristics of line. And so if I draw my own line, no, I don't want to do it right here, but it can have a certain dumbness or a certain self-conscious feeling to it. And whereas if I'm referencing an image, which I talked about nature, but I'm also interested in sort of the microbiology and what's happening underneath the appearance of things. And in terms of atoms, like the difference between what the surface of a leaf looks like and what its molecular structure is doing. So I refer to science a lot in my research, and in this piece I was just intrigued with this little giant chromosome of a midge. And so the image is just sort of relates to a lot of other patterns in nature, but what happens is if I'm just referencing this, I get a different kind of line. It's more of a distanced line, sort of a aloof line. And so I'm kind of interested in the relationship between those two and how do I bring them together, or do I? So there's always these questions when you're an artist, like, what if? And don't be afraid. Fear can really get in the way, and it has with me in the past. So as a way of breaking from the canon of art history and the traditional methods and practices of making a very important painting on canvas for, important causes and such, which can create a lot of fear and hesitation. I've been exploring different acts of exploring just not only the rectangular frame, which we expect to see a painting on, but also what does a painting mean? I was thinking about also traditionally how space is created through the illusion and pushing the space back into perspectival, three-dimensional space. And with my paintings, they're very much asserting the surface and the material properties of the paint themselves. So they're actually more honest because I'm not telling you a lie, saying that this is deeper than it is. And so now I'm even pushing it further by creating these veils, which actually a painting is a veil. Each layer is a veil. And we experience our world through veils, through screens of our phones and our computers and photography. So now I'm creating these painting on another type of mylar that I can impose over the painting and start breaking up that rectangular presentation, as well as extending the event of the painting's action onto the wall and into the space and into the viewer's experience, more than the viewer just interpreting it visually. She and he will feel it physically. And so I'm also intrigued with, what does this line mean that's on the surface in relation to the line underneath it? And those start forming a dialogue. So the work is always process-oriented and sort of referencing itself. Another way I think I've been doing is cutting up my old drawings and discovering new shapes, and then by cutting out even the shape of a line, I think has been sort of surprising for me. And in a way, and by reconfiguring the different shapes, I'm not only discovering new shapes, but I'm also intrigued with the negative space that happens. And so a lot of times my drawings are one big overall field, and so they're kind of like a figure. And in contrast to the general figure-ground relationship that most paintings have with figures and standing in front of their background. So then my grounds actually start becoming figures with these collages. So I actually kind of like them just on the wall, and I'm not sure if I started recreating that onto another piece of paper, it would become figure ground again. So I kind of like being able to play with it and surprising myself with, what other images. A lot of times in the process too, I'll see images that I didn't expect to see, and then the painting almost will become about that more than what I started with. So, anyway, I'm kind of intrigued with finding something worthwhile to do with drawings that maybe weren't always successful. So, yeah. So as I keep painting, I get to the process sometimes where I'm not quite sure if it's done, and I have to let it sit. And sometimes I'm never done. And I've even displayed and exhibited pieces. I had a show at the Junt where this piece, and that's Gonzaga's museum, and this piece was on display there. But it always felt like it was just hanging on a thread, and so I've been going back into it. And what's dangerous about that is because I'm a different person than I was when I first painted that. So it's kind of, it can be tricky. So as I don't lose the original impulse of it. But of course, I'm referencing a very small, tiny photograph, and it's really the act of trying to get a good painting out of it, not to show you an image of, of nature, but more the facts, the facets and experience of nature. So with this one, I'm still working on this, but still wanting it to keep its initial freshness. There's some others that I still haven't quite finished, and they've been hanging around. And this one, I'm intrigued with, just because I'm not leaving as much white. A lot of times I just start with a white canvas, and I'm almost painting in the style of watercolor, where you paint from white to dark. And in this piece, I wanted to go back to the traditional method of where you just create an overall field of color and then paint into that. So I'm still working on that, although I love the lyrical balance and play of this. I really want to add another element, but as soon as I do that, it changes. So then I have to commit to really, I might lose the painting in the process. Another one, this was one of my favorite paintings. It's because it just came out so, when I talked about contrived line versus natural line and versus authentic, original, expressive, direct line, this one has no fear in these marks. And it was actually after a season of doing a lot of weeding, I was trying to get rid of all the thistle out on our property. And so it's like these flying seeds, and it's also triggered by jazz music, and so you can feel it's an event. It's not really a scene, it's more of an experience, so, and an action. So that's one that I love. And I have other works that you can be seen at the Art at Work program at the MAC, and I'm actually going to have a show there in April in the Helen South Gallery, yeah. And so I'm really excited about that. It is a beautiful space. And so anyway, that's what I'm currently working on. I want to have some bright, fresh, exciting new paintings for that. And so you'll be enjoying your Christmas pudding, and I'll be in the studio painting. So thank you so much for coming to see me in my studio, and I wish you very, very happy holidays.
Hi, my name's Cheryl Metcalf, and welcome to my studio. We are Studio 6 in Coeur d'Alene. We're in the Rockford building. I've been here about a year, and I really enjoy the space. For downtown Coeur d'Alene, we get to be part of the studio tour every month, and it's just a wonderful space to work in. I have 2 studios, one in my home, and I have this one. So this one's definitely a really nice public place. I work in bronze. I facilitate a class every Tuesday from 5:30 to 8:30. And we always work in an oil-based clay, and always have a live model. It's open to the public. It was started by Terry Lee years ago. I started with Terry Lee probably, I'm going to guess, about 15 years ago. And so I learned from Terry Lee, and he learned from George Carlson, so it's kind of a trickle-down effect. You might see some of my heavier texture. I'm not saying I do anything like George Carlson, but probably some of that, my technique might kind of come from Terry Lee and George Carlson. I took a lot of education in Southern California with Andrew Cross and speed sculpting and anatomy, so that's been a big part of my education. Right now I teach whoever wants to be helped in the class on Tuesday nights. So an awful lot of my pieces will come from the model that we had. This particular model was a model we had last year, and I embellished her with some wings, and she became an angel. The patinas on my bronzes are, they can really vary. I go from, I kind of pull from what sells and what people like. This is another angel, and she sits in her wings, so she's a carefree angel. And she's quite stuck to the sand. There she goes. She's just heavy. So she's only connected at her toes. And her back of her wings was she was the first set of angel wings that I did. So there was a lot of remaking the wings, but I really liked them once I finally kind of got the feel for it. And this model was somebody, I had a 2-day show, I guess, up in Sandpoint. So I had other bronzes to show, but I hired a young gal to come up and sit for me for a couple days. So each day she would come. So I sculpted her. Of course, she wasn't nude there, but I sculpted her there and then came home and embellished her with wings. And this young lady is Carefree Allie, and she was supposed to get wings, but she wasn't very angel-like, so she never earned her wings. She's kind of a little bit of a floozy. So I really like her. She's just kind of a small, fun piece. This is a piece I call the Mountain Man, and he actually also was a model and in our sculpture class on Tuesday nights. So a lot of times the class is working along and maybe I finish before the class. So I embellish. So I got online and hunted for pictures of the mountain men, and so I found one that was pretty cool and kind of copied some of their just some of the things that they wore. And so this is, I forget the little name what he's called. I can't remember. But they often would have feathers. So if you were to get closer in here, there's bear claws and there's a rattlesnake tail. So it's just a fun piece that kind of came out of another piece to come out of the class, and it's a good seller as well. So have a good time with that. I first started sculpting because I came across a sculptor in the garden tour, Coeur d'Alene garden tour, years and years ago, and her name was Mickey Manx, that had this beautiful sculpture of clay, and I was drawn to it and asked her about her piece, and so she started telling me about Terry Lee's class. And my daughter is quite an artist. My daughter's name is Jessica. I have 2 children. My son is Kevin and my daughter Jessica, and hoping to inspire her, I was very encouraged by this woman sculpting a full figure. So I went and met Terry Lee, and he told me that I could set up my daughter for that class that was just beginning that night. I went and bought the clay and the tools, and I couldn't wait for my daughter to come home from high school. And when she came home, I presented her with my gift, and it wasn't well received. She pretty much told me that that was my thing, not hers. I was very saddened and frustrated, so I did go take the class myself. And when I walked in, they were measuring a nude model, very uncomfortable. So I didn't look. I walked past to where they were working on another room where they were building the armatures. Got busy in there, and eventually I had to go face the model that was nude. And so Terry showed us how to get your clay ready and build up your piece. And I was hooked from that minute on. I couldn't get my clay on my armature fast enough. I dreamt about it every single night. I couldn't wait for the next Tuesday, and here I am, still doing the same thing. Insane passion. I think about it, I still dream about it. I live it. I do have a day job, and someday that maybe this will be all I do, but it doesn't matter how little time I get with it or much time I'm away from it. All I can, when I'm back at it, it's just like, it just is so absorbing. It takes all of my thought process. I don't think about what's going on around me. It's just a passion. An armature is the skeletal of a piece. So an armature, this is one that was used, and it's actually one that you can actually hold in your hand. This is basically a stick figure of a person. The head's a little small. There's some brown clay on it, but you can bend it into any shape that your model might be in, minus the tail here. So, and then that's what holds your piece. So in this case, this girl she's got just one of these wires, except for instead of where I would hold this threaded rod is actually welded to this part in here. So, and it's a lot stronger wire. And that's what builds the form, or holds the form for the clay. And this, because it's thin enough, when you go to mold a piece, all my pieces go to bronze, so you can take a hacksaw and cut through that and remove a piece, because you can't mold it all in one piece. It generally has to be separated. When I did the Chief Morris antelope, the large piece that's out by the college, I think that was just short of 50 pieces. So you have to use a bigger saw. If I don't take a piece to bronze, if it doesn't get cut up, I can take it apart, reuse the armature. But generally, when on Tuesday nights, the first time we have a new model, we measure the model and we decide what scale we're going to scale it down to. So the measurements are all recorded, and so that's what we go by. So this piece has a lot of measurements, and then you'll take it and this is what we'll do to make the inner piece. So we know exactly the inside measurements of that person. So all these measurements with bottom of the foot, the knee, inside the hips, inside the shoulders, and so that's how we build this armature. And so there's a lot of math to it, and depending on the size of how big you want your piece, a common size, we might reduce it to 30% of actual size. And most of these pieces, that's why they look kind of uniform, are 30%. It doesn't use as much clay. A lot of times if you're going to do a life size or larger than life size, you'll make about 30%, 50%, and you'll scale up and you kind of make a couple different, and this would be called a maquette. A small piece, if I were going to go large life size, this would be called a maquette, and it would we'd scale it up as I went larger. All right, well, so I also kind of like animals, so there's a lot of bears. Living in the North Idaho, you just sculpt bears, and the first thing you do is you determine if the piece needs to be cut up. So if the piece can't be, the mold can't be removed, a lot of times the piece can lock a mold on, so you can never take the mold off. So you have to cut the piece up if you're doing your own mold. So the silicone is what goes over your piece first. The silicone goes over your pieces, and then a mother mold is made, and the mother mold is plaster. The mother mold is what holds the shape of the silicone. So once you take your piece back apart and you take your original back out, you can melt down the clay and reuse it. And that's what goes to the foundry, and the foundry pours the foundry wax into the mold. And the mold is, the foundry wax is poured as thick as they want to do the bronze. And then that mold of the wax gets taken out of the mold. And at the foundry, it probably goes through a minimum of 12 hands. So there's a wax room. So once the wax is taken out of the mold, there are people in there that sit and they use little hot tools, and it's called chasing. So they clean that wax up. And if there's any cuts or anything that didn't quite take right in a mold, they have all the tools. So they replicate the artist's pattern and their texture, and they clean it all up, and then that cleaned up piece of wax is dipped into what is called slurry. So it's a liquid, and then it's like a sand and a liquid and a sand, and it's in that room at least 3 weeks. So the piece is dry, and it builds like the cement casing around it. So inside that cement casing is the original wax that they had poured into the mold. And then once that's done in the slurry room, it goes into what I call a pizza oven. So the wax gets melted out. That's the title lost wax process. And now there's the void in there, that little space that used to be the wax, and that's what the hot bronze gets poured into. So that goes onto a special hanger, and then the bronze is poured in, and I think it's like 2,000 degrees. It's pretty hot. It's very interesting if you found a YouTube to find that and get an idea of all that it takes to do a bronze. So once that's cooled, it goes into a special chamber so it won't cool too quick. They use a sledgehammer, jackhammer, they take all that shale off, they sandblast it, and then there's another artist that's a welder that will put your piece back together, and when you do cut it apart, you have to score it. So if I were to cut her arm off, I would do little score marks so that at the very end, the welder can find those score marks, match up the piece the way it's supposed to be, weld it back together. They also cut windows out to help them reassemble the piece. So once it's back together, it goes to the patina artist. I always like to go to the foundry at this point, and it's called 2%. So you check your piece, make sure that it was assembled, or there's not any little pieces that are wrong. If sometimes the mistakes are on my end, not necessarily the foundry's, so they can make all those corrections. And then there's a wonderful person by the name of Bart at the foundry I use is Parks Bronze in Enterprise, Oregon. So he's done some patinas that I couldn't ever get at any other foundry. He's fabulous. And that's biggest reason why our bronze is so expensive is all that process. There's so many hands that your piece goes through before it's even a little guy like this has to go through every single step. It's pretty cool. So this is a piece, so there's a call to artists. Every time the city adds a public piece of art, it goes to call to artists, and it's an online program called the Cafe. So any artist can go to the Cafe and find out what's being offered on a public art basis. And the city of Coeur d'Alene put a call to art, and it was to be about human rights and our Coeur d'Alene's ability to be very inclusive. This art piece is all about what we stand for. And on the call to artists, the first step is just them picking 3 to 5 artists. The call went out to all of the US. So from all the people that applied, they picked 3 to 5. There must have been a lot of people to respond, so they had 5 people, and I was fortunate enough to be one of those 5. So I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to try and represent Coeur d'Alene in that way. And so this is my idea. It's due December 1st of this year, so by the time you're seeing this, it's already out for vote. It can be voted online. You can go online to Coeur d'Alene City, I think, to find the 5 pieces that will be representing, possibly representing Coeur d'Alene. So this is, I've just started it. I still have my way to work down. And the Coeur d'Alene tribe, there was a chief in the mid-1700s called Circling Raven. So I don't have a picture of Circling Raven, but I do have some pictures of some of the chiefs. They were just a few generations down. So I found an early generational Coeur d'Alene tribe member, chief. So I'm depicting him and this raven, so I kind of have him looking up at him. So the idea of that the raven was looking, they taught him to look for the black robe, which turned out to be the Jesuits. So as I go work my way down, I also wanted it to represent Coeur d'Alene. So in the backdrop, I made the shape of the lake, and it's just in different colored clay at this point. But when it comes to the patina can pick up, the artist can put another color in. And we also have a lot of our history is about logging and the railroad, so that's going to be in the backdrop. And as I work my way down, Bill Wasmith, there's other people that I want to depict that played a role in the direction that Coeur d'Alene has gone in being more equal. And so this is just the very beginning, and you guys will get to see the end result soon. And I sure appreciate you coming in and seeing my studio, and I thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year.
I'd like to welcome you to my studio in my home. I'm Gordon Wilson. I teach at Woodworth University, where I've taught for a long time, and I teach primarily drawing and painting and figure drawing, which is what I primarily do. In the past, I taught more subjects, so I taught printmaking, photography, design, watercolor, other media. But I've been working primarily with painting the last probably 25 years, and oil paint is pretty remarkable stuff because you can push it around, you can change it, you can make an infinite number of colors, and because it has an infinite number of possibilities, that also makes it difficult because you never feel like you're finished. But it gives you the opportunity to make changes, use color in a variety of ways. This is my studio, and one of the things I like about my studio is it's separate from the house, but it's attached to my house. And in the wintertime, especially when it gets cold outside and we have snow and there's not much color, you can make color in your studio. Currently I'm working on pieces for an exhibit that'll be at the Art Spirit Gallery in, I've got it here, April 9th to May 11th. And I will be showing some smaller pieces at the Art Spirit Gallery for their holiday exhibit, which is up through December 11th. So if you're watching the video, it's still up during that time. At a very early age, I found visual experience to be not only interesting and beautiful, but that there was a story involved. So I remember my father taking me arrowhead hunting, which he liked to do when I was 6 years old, hunting. And I remember seeing things like fish skeletons on the ground. Where we lived, the water would get really high in the spring, and the carp would move into these lowland areas to breed, and then when the water went back down, some of them would be still there. And so I would see these skeletons and decaying material, and to me there was a whole story involved. And I think that visual experience early in my life really made me interested in portraying things visually that tell some kind of a story. So I made this small painting for the Small Works exhibit at the Art Spirit Gallery in Coeur d'Alene, and it should be there through December 11th, unless they choose not to put it up. And I liked how that came out. It's actually a combination of two photographs that maybe you can see on the laptop here. One is my granddaughter several years ago when we were visiting in Yuma, and this is a mission, the St. Thomas Indian Mission in Yuma, and there's a story that goes along with that. And actually I have clues in here that I won't explain that have something to do with the history of the museum. I pushed the color in these images, so I just cranked that up on the computer and then used that exaggerated color in the painting. So that, of course, this isn't the natural color that was there. So I changed it in the computer and then used that as my model. I moved things around a little. The tree should be over here, but that didn't work. And I put my granddaughter here close up so that, again, it'd be kind of a tension, a story created by the combination of her in this position and the mission here. So, I don't know if you can come and see the palette here. In those paintings and in this painting too, I did something similar where the face is painted with brushes where I can make the color wet to wetten and use some form of blending the colors so that I can make something that's more like a face. In the rest of the painting, I'm going to use primarily palette knives, and those will be a little more abstract and a little more emphasis on the planes. So there'll be a difference in the way I treat that and this. The way I like to set up to paint is to have a lot of space for the paint, and these palettes are 16 by 20. It's a palette paper that I found that works really well. And I can actually scrape it down and reuse these paper palettes. And what I like to do is make a whole range of colors here, warm and cool, kind of a rainbow of colors, pre-mixed in a color range that I expect to use in the painting. So I won't necessarily use these exactly, but I have a range here that is probably what's going to go on most of the mission. I've got a range here that's more of the shadowed areas of the mission. And these are more the colors they'll use in the trees. And what was really interesting is, I was mixing these this morning, getting ready for this afternoon and tomorrow, is that this range of colors on the mission and the range of colors in the trees eventually are almost the same. So some of the colors in the tree are orange and yellowish colored, which you can see a little in this. And those colors happen on the mission too. I'd like to have a range of palette knives, and this, I don't actually put the paint on with this, but I use it as a straight edge in a lot of places. So I put it up there and use that edge. Sometimes I'll put paint on it and actually put lines down in the painting, so I like using them. This is probably the biggest palette knife that I actually use to paint with, and that often happens in the sky. This is probably, and most of the painters that I know, they have a palette knife about this size that they use commonly, and that seems to be one that I use a lot. But there are some places where I really need to get into, if I'm going to use a palette knife, and I do these places, I really need some that are small too. So I've got quite a range of palette knives and a ton of brushes too. I use liquid as a painting medium, and I like it because it makes the paint flow, but it won't run. So no matter how much of it you use, the paint won't run, and you never have to worry about runs and drips in your painting. So I consider my studio to be a visual research lab, and probably you'll go around here, and this looks more like a shop. I have 3 easels set up, and sometimes I move between them. This is a painting I'm working on right now. So why don't I come over here and... Okay, so this is a place we visited near Orvieto, and in Orvieto we stay with the same family summer after summer, 4 summers, at least 5 or 6 weeks. And one of the places they told us we should go is Lake Bolsena. So this is a view we really liked. I think we were parked somewhere back over here, and we walked around and we're out on a pier to make this painting. And this is a fortress castle, which is really common. Lake Bolsena is a volcanic lake, and it's much larger than Crater Lake, for instance, but it is a volcanic lake. There are a lot of these villages around Lake Bolsena, and many of them have medieval elements and elements that are more recent, and some probably no more than 50 years old. So there's kind of a history in these paintings. Come around here. So family told us, or Italian family told us, we should definitely come to see this village. It's interesting. Most of the villages in Italy and a lot of Europe are built on hilltops, so it's safer for the royalty to be on the highest place. And some of the places the people actually traveled up to the fortified area when they at night or when they were being under attack. The problem with Civitas is they actually build it on rock that's very unstable, and it's been crumbling, and it's in disrepair. I think some of the buildings are actually gone. When we were there was a woman in a wedding dress walking down the street, and she was being photographed, and I thought, this is really unusual. So we're near this ancient village that's built on an unfirm foundation, and there's a woman in a wedding dress. So of course I snapped pictures. What I didn't realize until later when I looked at the photograph and enlarged them, and this is a photo transfer on the painting, is that she never had a pleasant expression on her face. Well, it wasn't unpleasant, but I would say that she was melancholy. And I just thought that was unusual, this melancholy expression, and I connected it to this village built on an unfirm foundation, and the two, to me, had something to do with each other. So there was a story involved. I wanted to show the difference between a painted image and the photo image. So these two paintings are really similar. I did this one first, but I decided I'd make a painted image and have that with the village too. And so I didn't expect them to be a lot different, but to me they do read very differently, having a photograph and a painted image. Well, I decided also that that this bride could travel to other places. So I showed you the picture of Lake Bolsena, and so I decided that she could, in her wedding dress, visit Lake Bolsena too. So here she is with that same landscape behind her, but she's in her wedding dress. She'd have to be standing on the pier to do this. She has her same melancholy expression, so she didn't get happy going to this place either. So this particular view, I took a photograph when there's a really good reflection, which usually there wasn't. Usually there was enough disturbance in the water that the reflection wasn't good, but I snapped this one when I had a really strong reflection. So I wanted that in the painting. And I think that almost always when you have a figure in a painting, the eye is going to go to that figure. So no matter how dramatic I make the rest, it's not going to diminish this face. And having more than one focal point in a painting, I think, creates a tension that makes it more interesting. And also it makes the story, I think, more dramatic too. So this isn't toned down, it's pretty dramatic. In fact, the colors here are more dramatic than they are on the face. So and this must have been the summer before last summer, we visited Orvieto in Italy, and when we're finished there, we usually go to Germany and visit my wife's family and some of her friends. And we're sitting at the table, and something I almost always have with me is some kind of point and shoot camera. So if anything comes up, I start taking photographs. So I had that camera sitting on the table, and my wife was talking to Simona. And Simona said she was going on vacation with her husband to Croatia. And my wife said, Croatia, I don't know where that is. So Simona kind of half humorously picked up 2 spoons and was explaining geography with spoons. So this is Croatia, this is Munich. And as she, of course I had my camera sitting on the table, I just started clicking the shutter. And I got at least 4 photographs. Some she has a big smile on her face, and this one she was doing this mock serious kind of expression. Anyway, she was inside of, actually in their dining area when I took the photographs. This is a really well-known cathedral in Munich. It's an Odeonplatz, and that should be behind her here. So I put that behind her, and this is a typical train station in Germany. So of course these 3 things don't normally belong together, but she was explaining geography and Munich in relation to other places, and you'd get there partly on a train. And so anyway, that's how I put that image together. And just recently my wife sent the image, an image of this to her friend Simona in Germany. I'm currently on sabbatical, and part of my sabbatical is to be spent experimenting with approaches to painting that I don't normally use. So one of those is to do some photo transfer. So I've been playing with photo transfers in Muson and one of the other paintings here. And I've just been playing with them in different ways of applying them to the canvas and integrating those into a painting, because I don't want to do just the photo transfer, but I want to integrate them into the painting. So I have a number of canvases around here with faces or figures on them that are part of the painting. So this is a Rick Jandro piece, Heoka, and these are shape-shifting entities that Rick has depicted, and they can not only change the locations and shape-shift, but they can affect the weather too. And so this one's affecting the weather, kind of like the head on this one. This is also Rick's, and I believe it's called She's Going. And he usually works to music, and that was the music that was going when he made the painting. This is a Harold Blaze, and I'm trying to remember, it's an homage to, I can't think of who it is. This is Pauline Hawes, who taught at Whitworth for a number of years and was a mentor of mine. And this is Kay O'Rourke, a painting of her mother, and we knew her mother, Dee Dee, and so it was an important painting because we knew Dee Dee and the kind of personality she had, and Kay's been an inspiration to me too, and she just lives up the hill from here. So we're happy to have these two paintings also. Okay, if you're watching the video, you should be able to find my work at the Artsburg Gallery in Coeur d'Alene for their Small Works exhibit. And it's a holiday exhibit, and I would like to wish you a happy holiday, and part of that holiday could be viewing art in our community and in the Coeur d'Alene community too. And currently I'm working on paintings that will be in an exhibit at the Artsburg Gallery in April and part of May. So I'd like to thank you for watching and wish you a happy holiday.
Hello, my name is Kimber Follevaag. Welcome to my home. I'm a fiber artist living in Spokane, Washington. I started probably doing fiber art because my mother was a seamstress, and that's where all the stitching and weaving came into play probably. She set the bug for that. Before that, I was a ballerina for 17 years, so I've always kind of had that, creative energy, always trying to find, and as you get older and ballet is not what you do anymore, I moved into fiber art. I've been doing it probably for, 30 years or so, maybe. So I'm going to age myself here. People ask me, they always ask me, why are you an artist? And I always say the exact same thing, I'm not sure why. I find it very difficult. I feel very vulnerable doing it, and yet I can hardly wait to start my next project. So that's just something inside of you has to have that creative outlet. And this particular piece, I had several. It was a big series. This is the last one. It was called the Industrial Series. And so what happened was my husband actually found these industrial photos that were going to be thrown away. He found them out in the hallway. He grabbed them and gave them to me, and they sat on the back burner in my head like, I need to do something with those. And so this is kind of my first, when I started using photography and fiber art together. And so I took the industrial photos, and then I took acrylic panels, and I did a template where I drilled hundreds and hundreds of holes. And then I tried to find whatever, I copied whatever came up in the series. It still pixelated it, but you can kind of see back there what it is. But at first glance, you cannot. This is the last one. They all sold. There's a couple hanging up at the Wandering Table. Jenny Hegstead and Alan Hegstead, they bought a couple for there. So you can check that out. So this series is what I call the Cage Doll series. I did it with another photographer, a friend of mine. It was a 2-woman show, so it was a pretty big deal for us. I've always been in group shows before that. So we did the entire Terrain Gallery. And this, again, was a few years ago. And I'm going to read to you what we decided the show embodied and how we felt about it. The work in this exhibit explores 2 underlying themes: the barriers that we experience as women that have held us back, as well as the personal power that we draw on as women when we flourish. Historically, power has been associated with force, but is now undergoing a transformation and is being seen as the ability to make a difference in the world by enhancing the lives of others. And I love that. I love that we're transitioning from brute force to having power to thinking, how can I help you helps me? And so that's what the series is all about. And what I did, again, this is using photography. She would take the photo, and then I would do a photo transfer. And I would take the girl, and you have to rub off the paper. And actually, I rubbed so hard, I lost my fingerprint, I couldn't open my phone. Just weeks and months of getting these photos. And this part, the cage, is from back in the day, and I saw this when we were in Portugal. They had the cage dolls, and they would take they would make the wooden top part, and they would change. They have the cage. They could change out the skirt, and they would put these through the town, and people would worship the cage dolls. They would represent different saints or different, worship. And and that always struck me that, Cage was being on a doll and being promoted as someone that you wanted to worship, yet we were all being held back so much. So there's those things. So we decided to go with this series. And this was also, these are called corset cross stitch. These are also part of the Cage doll gallery show. And they're felt. I bought from New England, I got these felt squares, they're industrial felt. And then I went down to Gizmo and worked with a guy, and we laser cut all the holes through all these panels, and then I would stitch them. It's representational type of art because it goes with the cage doll. Corsets, of course, were worn by women, and they would cinch so tight that it would not allow for the lungs to fill at the bottom of your lungs, and so they would faint. They had fainting couches, and another thing that we think we're doing something to enhance women appearance, and yet incarcerating ourselves at the same time, something we need to stop doing. And so anyway, that's what these corset cross stitch are all about. And there's some from here, a retail store that helps artists in our area, and Okay, this series is called the Steiglick Museum Series. We were in Amsterdam at the museum, and of course I looked at the artwork, but I also was taking pictures of people looking at the artwork. Again, this is my attempt to incorporate photos with fiber art. So it's kind of my way of photoshopping with fiber, and it's a collage. Of course, this lady wasn't in the museum, so I cut her out, put it on. There's a lot of stitching going on. I would drill the holes in the acrylic like I did in the other series, and then embroider through the holes and stuff. So that's this series. So this is called Variation of a Photo. It's one woman with a hat on, and I did 3 different variations with fiber art with it. These were actually at the Terrain Show a few years back. And so what I do, again, have the photo, and then would drill the holes. This particular one has tiny, tiny French knots. It takes weeks to drill the holes and months to do the knotting. And again, I would just see what was underneath the photo and try to pull the fiber to match it. So it would pixelate it, disrupt it, but you could still tell what it is. This one actually has wire mesh. And I cut it out and then did kind of the same process. I would match what was coming up underneath. And so it's tiny little woven embroidery threads all throughout her face. And this one, I tried to play with a mirror behind it. Actually, if you get very close, I sliced the photo so that the mirror behind it, if you get close enough through her, you can see yourself. And there also is some stitched little French knots in this one as well. Okay. All right, and the current series that I'm working on I call them cross lines. They're not a narrative like some of my other work. However, I still think when I'm weaving these, and I'll explain that in a minute, that when you're putting one strand in, it's not so strong, but when we're woven together as a community, it creates a pattern and just togetherness and a force and empowerment, right? So these, what I do is I usually take, not all, pretty much all of these, I take old silk screen frames and I cut the silk screen out, and then you wrap them one way and then you weave them the other way. And so it creates these patterns and colors, and Yeah, the textural quality of them I really enjoy. They're fun to make, actually. Yeah, so that's the Crossline series. So I love creating art, but I also thoroughly enjoy supporting other artists as well. And I enjoy seeing their work in my home. So we have a variety of artwork from all over the world, actually, and even local artists as well. So this painting, along with the painting over there and one in the kitchen, are all done by the same artist, by an artist named Nicole Teflinger. It was a French woman, and the story goes, I think she actually wrote a book, and the story goes that she was in a little French village back during World War II, young girl, and a guy, a pilot, was looking for places to land airplanes, an American pilot. And he landed in this field, and of course all the village rushed out to see this American pilot, and her girlfriends dared her to kiss him. Hence, that's how she got to America. And she was a professor, an art teacher down in Pullman. Down in Pullman. I think her husband became a professor as well, an engineer. They had several children, and when she passed, the children took, of course, the artwork that they wanted, and then the rest, a gallery by the name of Left Bank down in, is it Pullman? Yeah, Pullman, Washington. I don't know, Washington. Left Bank. They had all her pieces, and we got to pick out a few, and I just love them. And yeah, I love the story, and yeah, and this one's called For My Love. She did a lot for her husband. And so that's that story. If you're interested in any of my artwork, I have a Facebook page, Kimber Follevaag, or I have another Facebook page called Kimber Handmade. I also have an Instagram account called Kimber Handmade. And you can just direct message me if you're interested in any of the artwork. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thanks for coming to my studio. My name's Waldman, and this is where I digitally do work now. Some of you might know my work or followed me through the years. My first art fest was 1988, and I've been in the Max Art at Work and now Art Source program, the rental program, since about 89 or 90. And so you might have seen my work in other places. It changes regularly. Some of my friends have always said, you need to pick one thing and do it. Well, I picked photography. I have painted in the past. My background is an undergrad degree in design. And I first started doing all black and white. And then I would cut parts out. I would tint, color, and make new pieces out of the photographs. So I'm not a traditional photographer, more trained as an artist in drawing and painting. It's one of the things that I like to push the photographs to become new and different things, which we'll be talking about. But I worked in the darkroom for about 25 years, and every time I would rent an apartment, I made sure the bathroom had a good place so I could work in the tub or do whatever I could with the darkroom. And so about, I'd say 2010, I let it go and started doing everything digitally. The output has finally caught up, and I actually fulfilled a commission for a gal, and she didn't realize that I did it digitally. I shot film, but I finished, and in fact, I have that roll of film, I've never developed it. I just started to work so much more on the computer, and it just serves my purpose better now. But all the things I learned, I brought from the darkroom. So now it's dry instead of wet, and the darkroom now is where I do some painting and assemblage work. And so this is just going to give you a sample of what I work with. In about 2011, I have a good friend, Louise Cotis, and she prompted me to apply to do a public piece. And I applied, and I was awarded a piece down at the convention center. And to be able to do that piece, I had to build a computer that I could build the pieces at spec. And the pieces are 10 foot by 10 foot. There's 4 of them. And they're in the lobby space at the convention center. And so this monitor, this just regular computer, I built the workstation to be able to work with it, and it's pen driven, so I can just draw on it. And now this is an old thing, but back then it was a new thing. It was a trick. So the most recent work I've been working on are more collage, and in fact, in the darkroom, I would have to take 2 or 3 negatives. I would have enlargers lined up, and there's a lot of alignment and lighting issues, and I would combine photographs. I might get 1 photograph out of a 4-hour session, and it's now I'm free. I'm more free to be able to shoot different things. I look for architectural components, and I love gardening, so I work in my garden too, and I introduce those components too. But I'm going to click through these layers real quick so you can see how this piece progresses. And you'll see this might not be in the order that I did it, but I'm going to progressively go through so I can show you. And you can see how different parts, so I tend to photograph different things, and so I'm thinking in the future maybe combining things. I never know what might happen, what might show up, and different things will inspire me, but that's the finished piece. And so this one, it's just weaving different elements and colors and getting a feel for composition. But that's where I'm headed. And the next room I'm going to show you is the frame shop and studio space that I work in, and some samples of my work. I do custom framing. I actually I came to Spokane in 1985 and to work with Nordstrom in display, and then I took a job picture framing. So I've been professionally picture framing since '86, and then I've been independent on my own. I bought the equipment every few years, and so I've been on my own since about 2001. And anyone who remembered my name from the 2 shops I worked in, they've continually been my clients. And then from friends of friends, and then when I frame things and take them to shows such as Art Fest, people ask, well, who does your framing? And I'm like, I do. And so I have lots of different selections and companies, and so it's just juggling a few different business aspects of the studio and making art and managing some galleries, and then managing my space, and then having a framing clientele. So it's been a really nice balance for me. And so I'm going to show you a few samples of some work, and then I want to mention too, when you come to my website and purchase, you can pick things up from the studio space. I can ship things, so real easy to shop from me, and I'm a text or call away, and I can ship distances. I do have work in other countries. I've been able to reach out through the website to a lot of different places, which is nice. And since my work is based in photographs, it's something that it's easy for me to take, manipulate, change, and that's what I've always done with my work, is pushing it further and further to change it. And one of the things I've done is present the work on aluminum, and the company that I'm working with is in California, and they've started to put the work on a satin finish, which I really like. It retains the contrast of the work, but it looks exactly like what I've produced on the computer. And it's nice because then you can frame it, but you don't have to. That's from a picture framer. It's like trying to get away from framing. But it's fun for me to be able to work on different sizes. And what I've done is I've done a little bit of a twist. I've put a curve into some of them, and I'm going to show you how I bend one of those. And what's nice is it gives it a sculptural look, And you can see on the pieces behind me up on the wall, this is something I'm always pushing the photographs to get them into a different look, either painterly, sculptural. But what's really fun is to, just make a little bit of a twist. And so this guy, this is a skyline up at Priest Lake, and I'm going to throw a little curve in it. I'll show you how I do that. And it's not very hard. It's kind of fun. So what I do is I look at the composition and see how I might want it. I've curved some outwards before. I've experimented. I've ruined a few. But I've got a little bit of formula on how much I can push it now, so I know. But since this is a bigger mountain coming in here, so I'm going to put a curve in here. Not very hard to do. I just kind of play with it and bend it a little bit. It's kind of fun to do. It's not fun when you run them. You can run them, but the aluminum, it's the company that does my work. They make a transfer of my file, and then they put it onto the aluminum, and with heat and pressure, it bonds to the plate. So now it's got a curve in it. It makes it kind of interesting. And so then I will put a hanging system on it too, to hang it like that every time. But these make really fun gifts. And they're fun to show. And there's groupings. I've installed a few of these on exteriors at homes. I've actually put them on homes where they were exposed a little bit, and so we actually drilled holes through them and screwed them right onto the siding of the home. So another thing I've done with these is brought out the painting skills, and it's kind of fun. So I bought some canvases and then prepped them and used acrylic paint, and then just did paintings on them. And so I've mounted the photo. It's kind of an abstract part of the photograph, but then extended it with acrylic paint on it. These are really fun for me to do. It's just something that I love to just keep pushing and experiment with photographs. Here's another one. It's kind of fun to just have a little bit of accent on the side, and kind of it just, for me, it expresses just another way to present my photographs. And that's something that, since everyone has a camera and everyone is a photographer now, and I've been working on it for years, it's fun for me to be able to keep pushing and finding different things in the photographs. And so when I keep shooting, and I might be on a trip or out in my garden, but I'm always looking for shapes, contrasts, and I never know when I might call up an image, but I know that if this ever goes, I might have some trouble, but I always tend to know right where things are, and I file, I keep things grouped, and it's usually by color or maybe a particular flower or architecture kind of thing. But it's fun to look for little elements to add. But I may start with a base of a particular flower or a sculptural piece. So whenever I'm out, I'm always looking for lines and different contrasts and things. And so then I start making composition and adding and stretching things and playing. And so I love the texture of composition and the collage. So this piece, I've selected a few out. You can look at these on my website, and you can get a better feel for the image, what it looks like. But this started with a walk in the park. So it was probably early October last year at Manitou in the Japanese garden before they closed it up for the year. And the leaves were clustered in the corner of the pond, and so it didn't look like much, but for me, when I saw the shapes and then the contrast of the blue, the skies reflecting off the water, I thought, oh yeah, this is going to be something. I don't know what it'll be. And, so I start seeing the different composition in this, I felt that, I'm always looking for an architectural piece to add in. So I had recently been to the Yaquina Lighthouse in Oregon Coast, and I remembered the spiral staircase that I shot, and I thought, well, that might be kind of cool twist in there, and it had some texture. So all the little diamond patterns, that's from the stairs looking up through. And so it's really fun for me to search for components to add, and sometimes I'll stretch them or move them to fit the composition. So once I had that in, then I added the peony. So I put this in, and then I started to add different things, and I had little spiral leaves that I put in, and I'll just keep playing, and it's kind of like keep painting, keep adding until I feel that I look away from it, or I'll print a little proof, and I'll go, okay, yeah, I'm there, I'm done, that's good. And this is a piece that I've just, I don't know why, I just feel attached to. There's different things in, and then occasionally I'll hide things, and there's something that I've hidden in here that a couple people have not found yet. And so if you paid your $10, you get to see this, because I've been telling you. So there's 3 seagulls in here from the coast, and there's shadows. There's shadows. Here's 1, here's 2, and there's the 3rd. And so they're in here. Well, it's myself, my husband, and my daughter. And it's one of those things. A lot of my pieces, you might pick out 3 elements because it means something to me. So the other thing I wanted to show you before I go on to some other images is from this piece. I'll put this back here. In about 2016, I started to play around with designing my work on fabric, and this piece is translated to this. This is a polyester, but I can order silk, and so I've started to have the work presented on fabric. And so I pull elements from the piece, or I'll revisit different images or files to pull things together to do that, and that's what I'm wearing too. So the one I'm wearing is from this piece, and for me, being able to shift color, I felt like, I really think this would be a fun scarf, but I don't know if people would wear lime green, so I shifted it more to teals and blues, because I can. So that's kind of the cool thing about Photoshop and me playing, and I tend to just use Photoshop. I use Painter occasionally, some Nik effects, filters, but mostly shoot with a couple of different Canon cameras, and then different lenses. But I am a photographer, and I have to stay in that media, but my work doesn't stop when I push the button, and that's the difference between me and some of the photographers I know. They'll set up beautiful shots or stay in one spot for 6 hours and wait. I'm more of a shoot it when I see it really quick. But the work for me comes after I gather those and keep pushing the elements with it. If you follow my work, one of the first things and early things I've always done are make cards. And so I'm going to try to put it on the site for you to see, but I do have a lot of images. All my images can be purchased as 5x7 cards, either cut or add a little piece of paper to it. But I will have some holiday cards for you to enjoy and purchase. And then the other thing I have are gift certificates. I'm going to put a little live link on my site that I can either mail one to you, or I'll give you a code and you can print one off, because I know it's hard to buy art online, but you can always give a gift certificate and have a choice later or something. So this is the work. I've got scarves in the length that I'm wearing, or little short guys. This one was made from this particular piece, and so the scarves come in a couple different ways, and then I do also have headbands that I've made. So headbands and scarves. This is also from the piece that I did the collage in Japanese garden. But I'm so glad you visited my studio, and I hope you learned a few new things. I'm always working. It's an addiction for me. It's something it's never ending, especially with my media. I'm so fortunate and grateful to have the media that I'm working in, because it's truly a never ending thing, and I love it. I love doing it, and it's so fun to share it. And I'm so glad that you came to the artist studio tour, and thank you to the MAC, and happy holidays.
Howdy, I'm Hazen Audel, and if this is a studio tour, this is some of it. Welcome to the madness. Have a look around. So yeah, by the time I was really going into metalwork and doing kind of large scale architectural work and municipal public works with metal, that was where I started to really see, I can make a pretty decent living at this. But the one problem with me, it's part of my personality trait, is sometimes I become really fixated on what I'm working on, and it seems like when I'm working with metal, maybe it's just because of the nature of the material, but it's heavy, it's usually hot, it's sharp, dirty, and when I'm working with it, I'm working in this angry fury, and really the destination is what I'm after, like the end product. And I found that if I'm working in that sort of way, that becomes my personality, and I don't like that, like this angry fury metal guy. And so I think I've, over the years, probably over 20 years of doing that, I've taken a couple steps back and started to realize that really I'm more interested in the process, because with metal it's not always that fun. But I'm definitely I think that's a nice part of my portfolio, is what I've done in the past, and there's still interesting projects ahead. But what I really enjoy doing right now, and I think all of us artists, we go through stages, but I just love diversifying. So like right now, I'm fortunate now because I can focus on my biggest project of all, which is this studio. And I've never had time to do my own work, but now with COVID and other things, and I guess this desire to have an early retirement, I'm working on my own things. So, all the lighting in this studio is all handmade. This is some chandeliers that I'll have upstairs. Maybe we'll go up there on a little tour. But these were hand blown, not by me, by Steve Adams, spectacular artist here in Spokane. That's the one thing nice about being productive and crafty, is sometimes you get to rub shoulders with some really amazing artists here in Spokane. But yeah, this might be an example of the sort of things that I like to do, just new challenges. I like to diversify, I like to switch things up, so not only am I doing a little bit more painting, I can never paint enough, but I'll do drawing, painting, metalwork, but then if I can get into wood, that's kind of the more material that I can zen out on, and I can just enjoy the process quite a bit more. I like the smell, I like the feel. I like that it's all wood. You know, it usually tells a story, and so then it seems like I'm having more of a relationship with the process, and I enjoy that. So maybe not artwork, maybe more craftsmanship or something of that nature. I don't know. You know, there's a lot of people that get really heady about art, but I just like making, and if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it cool. I guess let's go take a tour around the other things that I like to do. So when this studio is all finished, my big dreams for this area is all woodworking shop, building fine furniture, things like that. I already have all my wood stashed away, so years and years of projects. We'll go over here. And yeah, I'm transitioning from my house in town, where I have a studio in there. That's my metal shop, and it's dirty and chaotic, and we'll go there too. But this is where I want to have as my little artist sanctuary where I can make messes but be around nature and have the room to do whatever kind of artwork I want to do. So this is outside work area. This is my metal shop, which you might have pictures on the outside, but I just finished this year, and this is going to be my metal shop, which I think is a couple steps better than the one that I have in town. I just need to move in all of my tools, but in the summertime I hate welding because it's so hot outside. So this is pretty much mostly underground. I have a green roof that's a garden up on top, and yeah, again, it might be a place where I can enjoy the process of building. So I'm getting wiser as I get older. We'll go up to the studio up here. This building is going to be a place where I can get myself back into ceramics, because that was a big part of my life. So I want a pottery wheel and get funky with clay. And this is a big enough space to where I envision running classes. So whether it's, I was a science teacher and art teacher for 10 years, so I can't help but to try to, yeah, I envision running classes here, whether it's in science or nature or building things. So this will be probably predominantly clay. Upstairs, we'll go in there. I've got, well, we'll just go up there and show you. This whole building, I took it down. It was recycled from it was an old grain silo, and I don't know, it's about 130 years old. They were going to tear it down and burn it down. I took it down and then put it up here. It took me 10 days, and then I've been building it for the last couple of years. But this place has good bones, so whatever comes out of here should feel good, I hope. This is a place where I'm doing a lot of sculpture, so clay modeling, and down below this place is where I'm going to be doing castings. So bronze casting, some things like that. But yeah, this is a little work in creation at this point. It's practice, but I hope to become proficient enough to be doing bronze busts and more bronze sculptures in the future. So I am looking ahead, and this has been kind of a new medium for me, and I've been really enjoying it. We can go upstairs and we'll go look where my jewelry studio is going to be. But this is going to be a place that hopefully won't have so much madness, and it'll have more like, I just want to be like, have a cool place to work and make cool stuff. Okay, we'll go. Here's the metal shop. This particular spot, this is my metal shop where I do a lot of some more large scale metal pieces. Right now I have a couple commissions going. I'm predominantly commission based. So, and predominantly because I like making a lot of art that is really functional and it fits a space in a particular client. So I like problem solving in that way. So, and I have different styles. Again, it's like problem solving, like make artwork that best fits where it's going to be. This is a kind of a contemporary piece. It's salmon flowing on the river, and it's going to go up into a museum up in their garden grounds up in British Columbia. And there's an ongoing theme throughout this museum about their fisheries. So this will be a gate. Quite a bit more work to be done on this. This is going to be this is a gate going to a school in Texas. There was a teacher that was very loved, and she passed away from cancer. So this is a memorial gate. Quite a bit more work to be done with this. This next week I'll be building the frame that'll go around it and some other features for this. This is a mock-up for a building over on the East Coast, and so this is just, I had to build it, and then they'll look to see if this is something that this is a design that they're gonna go with. So yeah, this place keeps me busy, but I'm gonna be moving everything that I have here and all of the tools and all of the chaos. I'm gonna bring it over to my the studio that I'm building out in the country, and then this makes quite a bit of racket and noise, and I have less neighbors over in the country, so I won't be waking anybody up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Then there's upstairs up here. This space up here is a place where I do a lot of finish work. Usually when I'm working on things with wood, this is a tabletop that's going to go into a lodge up in North Idaho. With all of my woodwork, I only work with domestic woods, so woods that grow around where I live. So this is sort of an exotic tree for here, but it was growing in a person's yard. It's hophorn beam ironwood, and so it was on its last legs anyway. So for the client, we cut down the tree and milled it up, and then we're making a tabletop out of it. These little bow ties here that fasten the two planks together, that's all black walnut from a tree that I found. But I have kind of, if you look around here and over there at the barn, I have piles of wood, and every single board tells a story. But yeah, with wood like this that comes from here, the reason why I stick with domestics is because, well, the other side of me is I work with National Geographic, and I do a lot of filming and a lot of working in a place that's very special to me, and that's the natural world. And so I know, and I've seen firsthand all the wood extraction and all of the logging that's been taking place and clear cutting that's been happening in Southeast Asia and South America especially. So I'm not interested in exotic woods. I want to know exactly where my wood comes from, and to me it just means something more to me. And when you take a tree like this, where it was on its last legs anyway, you can tell right here, this little streak going right through here is an indication of the disease that this tree was going to succumb to. But in its next life, it just adds beauty to this piece and tells a story. And that's one reason why I really appreciate working with wood. So having combinations of all the different capabilities of adding metal along with wood, I like mixing that as an exploration for me as an artist. Other parts up here, this is my little nook for jewelry and small sculpture. Usually, yeah, there's a lot of different projects going on at the same time, a lot of experimenting. But right now I'm just working on a small piece. I have a client in England that commissions me to make her a jewelry piece every year. So this is a small little pin that I'm devising yet. I haven't quite finished yet. And then after this, I'll be silversmithing a pair of cufflinks for her husband. And that's been a wonderful relationship that's been going on for about 15 years now. So yeah, this is just again another little creative nook where I can focus on little projects at a time, and then downstairs is my bigger projects. As I was talking below, most of the things that I make are commission based, but every once in a while I get a wild hair and an idea, and I try to run with it. If you look around here, there's pretty much in every nook and cranny, you'll probably find something. This was noticed by the crew here. This is again, it was just an idea, and I thought I'd make something out of it, so I turned this into a jewelry box. and you can put all your little treasures in there. And for me, it wasn't for a particular client, it was just to see if I could do it. And that's what I enjoy about the process. Yeah, I don't have any specific style. I just want to know that whatever I devote my time to, that it winds up being cool. It tells a story, and I really want the end product to exhibit really good craftsmanship. I'm glad that the MAC came by and they consider me an artist, and they wanted to see the mad workshops that I'm into, and like I said, it's an honor, because in this part of the world there are some fantastic artists, and I'm glad that people consider me as somebody that rubs shoulders with some of those people. So again, thank you, and happy holidays.